Why does it still feel stuck, even after everything you've tried? You've worked harder, manifested louder, you've done the routines, the visualizations, the midnight prayers. So why hasn't the breakthrough come? This is where it hurts. You start wondering if maybe you're the problem. Maybe you don't deserve it. Maybe it's just not your time. Maybe you're not doing it right. But what if that entire way of thinking is backwards? What if it's not about what you're doing, but what you're assuming while you're doing it? Because here's the spiritual truth that'll flip your paradigm. Energy does not obey your effort. It obeys your assumption. You can push all day, but if deep down you expect delay or assume rejection, that's exactly what your life will echo back. Why is it that people who do less seem to receive more? Why do those who walk in quiet confidence keep getting chosen? It's because energy moves toward certainty, not struggle, toward inner yes, not outer noise. So if you're exhausted from trying, begging, hoping, waiting, this message is your turning point. Because once your assumption becomes unshakable, the universe bends, and the blessing has to find you, not through hustle, but through harmony. And today, I'll show you how to flip the switch from force to flow, from trying to knowing, from being blocked to being undeniable. Get ready. The shift begins the moment you decide it's already done. You've assumed, you've visualized, you've whispered affirmations in the dark, and yet, nothing moves. You wait, hoping for a shift, watching others receive the very things you cry for in secret. The more you try, the more it feels like life is standing still. You ask yourself, quietly, what am I doing wrong? You've read that you must believe, that you must assume it is done. But how do you assume when your reality screams the opposite? How do you walk in abundance when the numbers say no, the mirror says not yet, and time whispers that you're too late? What if I told you it's not your desire that's the problem? It's the direction of your energy. You're not manifesting wrong. You're manifesting backward. The law of assumption hasn't failed you. You've simply used it in reverse. And here's the bold spiritual promise. When you align your assumption with divine identity, not emotional desperation, the external world becomes obedient. What you assume in peace manifests with power. What you speak in knowing becomes form. Because, as Florence Scovel Shinn said, the invisible forces are ever working for the man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it. The strings are in your hand, but you've been pulling them with fear. Let's turn it around. The law of assumption is simple, but sacred. It states that whatever you consistently assume to be true will become true for you. Assumption isn't positive thinking. It's not begging with better words. It is a mental state so internally stable, the outside world is forced to follow its lead. The outer is the shadow. The assumption is the form. Your reality is the echo, not the cause. But here's the crisis. Most people assume based on evidence, not essence. They look at the bills and assume lack. They look at the delay and assume denial. They look at the silence and assume rejection. They react to appearances instead of creating from truth. They assume from fear, so fear becomes form. This is why their manifestation doesn't arrive, or worse, arrives in distortion. They pray for love, but assume abandonment. They affirm wealth, but assume limitation. They ask for healing, but assume suffering. And every day they confirm their assumptions through thought, word, and mood. So how do you shift? How do you move from backwards assumption to divine creation? You must reverse the direction of belief. You must stop assuming based on appearances and begin assuming based on divine identity. Not what your eyes see, but what your soul knows. You are not waiting on the world to show you something new. The world is waiting on you to assume something different. Assume you are already chosen. Assume you are already loved. Assume it is already yours, not because of force, but because it is finished. You don't have to earn, just align with it. Florence said, man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. Your job is not to make it happen. Your job is to see it fully, completely, joyfully, in the quiet of your spirit. And refuse to flinch when the outer world throws shadows. You don't fight shadows, you change the light source. Say these with me slowly. Let them land in your nervous system. I now assume it is done. I now assume it is done. I now rest in divine completion. I now rest in divine completion. I no longer argue with appearances. What I assume in peace, I receive in power. What I assume in peace, I receive in power. She was tired, not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but soul tired. Her name was Anna. She'd been journaling her dreams for over 2 years. Every morning, affirmations. Every night, visualization. She even had sticky notes on her mirror that said, "It is done." But behind her affirmations was fear. Behind her rituals was pressure. Every time she said, "I receive," her body screamed, "But I don't have it." The turning point came on a quiet Sunday morning. Her rent was due, her account was low, and all the manifestation techniques felt like lies. She threw the notebook across the room and whispered, "I surrender. I don't know how anymore, but I trust it's already mine." She walked outside, barefoot. No rituals, no mental gymnastic, just a strange calm, like something in her spirit had given up the performance. And in that stillness, the shift came. The very next day, an old client she'd forgotten about paid an overdue invoice. A week later, she was offered a job she never applied for. Her circumstances didn't respond to her force. They responded to her peace. Because peace is the frequency of power. Trying is the signal of lack. When she stopped pushing, life started moving. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you assume is already yours. When the inner world is convinced, the outer world complies. You've done the rituals, you've learned the affirmations, you've cleaned your energy and followed every spiritual step, but still, you wait. You wonder if you're blocked, if something in you is broken, if the law is working for everyone but you. Quietly, painfully, you ask, why is it not coming? But here is the question you must confront. Do you truly believe it's done, or are you still trying to make it happen? Because assumption without surrender is still control and disgust. And what you try to force, you delay. What you hold too tightly, you strangle. There is a divine law, older than time. What you let go of in faith becomes magnetized to you, but what you grasp in fear runs from your. So let me speak this into your spirit now. Your assumption must be free of anxiety. Your belief must be pregnant with rest, because manifestation is not performance, it is permission. You are not here to wrestle the universe into blessing you. You are here to align with what is already yours, and let it arrive. Florence said, faith knows it has already received, and acts accordingly. The moment you drop the pressure, the thing you seek begins moving toward you, not because you earned it, but because you matched. Assumption is not repeating the same sentence. It's resting in the knowing that the sentence is already true. It's no longer checking the mailbox. It's setting the table. It's no longer waiting for proof. It's being the evidence. So why do so many people block this law? Because they think surrender means passivity. But surrender is not weakness. Surrender is supreme alignment. When you let go, you're not giving up. You're giving in to the current of divine law. You stop swimming against the current of your own design. You float, and the river takes you home. So how do you shift into that? You release the timeline. You bless the silence. You breathe when the fear rises, and you remind your soul, it is already mine. I do not chase what belongs to me. Say these with me now. I no longer chase. I receive. I no longer chase. I receive. I surrender the how, and align with the now. I surrender the how, and align with the now. It is already done. I walk in peace. It is already done. I walk in peace. Divine order is active. I am no longer afraid. Divine order is active. I am no longer afraid. He was a businessman, mid-40s, built for the hustle. Every book on abundance, he read it. Every seminar, he sat in the front row. He repeated affirmations with intensity, visualized twice a day, and still, the deal didn't come. Month after month, doors closed. Nothing moved. His faith turned to frustration. He kept saying, I believe, I believe, I believe. But deep down, he was forcing belief like a product, like a sale. Until one day, something broke. He stopped. He sat in stillness and asked, what if I already have? What if I stop begging and just believe like it's already mine? For the first time, he stopped trying to get and started learning to receive. Within days, an investor who had gone cold reappeared. The project was revived. the contract signed. It wasn't effort that changed the outcome. It was his vibration of rest. He stopped assuming that believing harder would make it happen. He began assuming it had already happened. Because divine law is not moved by pressure, only by peace. Assumption without surrender is still fear. But when you release the how, the now begins. This is the turning point. You are not here to chase. You are here to assume in stillness, in trust, in divine boldness. And as you do, the world around you will begin to. You keep preparing, but nothing seems ready. You keep praying, but nothing seems to move. You keep waiting, but nothing shows up. And in the quiet hours of your soul, you've begun to wonder, am I the one blocking it? You've done the work, you've journaled, visualized, and affirmed, yet the breakthrough feels like it's running on a track you can't access. So let me ask you this. What if the universe has already delivered, but you aren't prepared to receive? The truth is, life doesn't give us what we want. It gives us what we're prepared for. Spirit does not flow into chaos. Divine law cannot fill what's full of fear. You say you're ready, but your nervous system still rehearses loss. You say you're available, but your words still echo lack. You say you're waiting on your blessing, but your blessing may be waiting on you. There's a shift that happens when you stop waiting and start preparing. A magnetic current begins to stir when you set the table before the feast arrives. That's not delusion, that's faith. Florence Scovel Shinn taught, your supply is either coming toward you or going past you. Why? Because your preparation is the invitation. Your readiness is the landing strip for the impossible. The divine law at work here is the law of assumption, but not the popular kind. Not the surface level, just believe it, and it's yours. I'm talking about the inner rewiring of identity. The law of assumption isn't about pretending, it's about becoming. It says assume the vibration of what you desire, and it must appear, not because the world changed, but because you did. So what blocks this law? Fear of disappointment. Deep down, people are afraid to prepare in case it doesn't happen, afraid to believe in case it breaks their heart. But here's the paradox. If you don't prepare, you guarantee the delay. Florence said it best, fear is man's only enemy. When you speak from fear, act from fear, prepare for failure, you are assuming the worst and manifesting from it. To shift into alignment, you must prepare for what hasn't arrived as if it has, not as performance, but as prophecy. Change your inner language, rearrange your physical space, align your behavior with the outcome you desire. If you want love, become the version of you that's loved. If you want abundance, walk in the posture of wealth. Remember, your word is your wand, and your habits are the spell you cast daily. I am now prepared for the blessing I have prayed for. I am now living in the vibration of answered prayer. I trust that the invisible is organizing for my highest good. I take aligned action with divine confidence. I no longer wait in fear. I prepare in what I prepare for prepares for me. He was a quiet man, never spoke much about dreams, just worked, paid bills and stayed out of trouble. But one night, he saw a video, maybe like this one, and something cracked open. It said, what if your life isn't stuck? You're just not prepared for what you asked for. That line haunted him. He looked around. His home was in disarray. His health was neglected. His finances were reactive, not receptive. So he made a silent vow. I will even if I have to fake the faith at first. He woke early and began walking. He cleaned out his space. He wrote a letter of gratitude for the job he didn't yet have. When friends mocked him, he didn't defend. He just said, I'm getting ready. Weeks passed. No call, no email. Then one day, a position opened. He walked in calm, ready, rehearsed, and the interviewer said, I don't know why, but it feels like you were made for this. Preparation is not a delay. It is the final proof of belief. The blessing is not late. Your readiness. We've been told to wait on divine timing, and we should. But divine timing isn't about the clock. It's about your consciousness. You do not attract what you fantasize about. You attract what you are equipped to handle. So check your identity. Are you preparing as if it's real, or just wishing because you're scared? Back when I thought I was ready, I still had the language of fear. I'd say things like, if it happens, or hopefully. But when I became the version of me who already had it, my language changed. I started saying, when it arrives, it's unfolding now, I'm grateful for what's on the way. That wasn't fake. That was faith in action. That was the law of assumption taking root. The universe does not hesitate, but it will not hand power to someone unprepared to carry it. So instead of asking, why hasn't it happened yet? Ask, what version of me would naturally have this outcome? Then start becoming her today. Now here's the brutal truth you're ready to hear. Lack isn't a condition. It's a conclusion. It is not what you have. It's what you declare. It's what you agree with. It's what you rehearse in the silence of your inner world. And it's sneaky, because lack often hides behind logic. I'm just being realistic. I need to be responsible. But the language of realism often camouflages the frequency of fear. Florence said, man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. Read that again. She didn't say what's true, she said what you see. So if you keep seeing lack in your bank account, in your love life, in your health, it's not because it's destiny. It's because you've agreed with a false conclusion, and divine law will never violate your free will. The divine law here is the law of the word, the spiritual principle that what you speak becomes the mold of your experience. Your word is your wand. You are not describing your life, you are declaring it every time you speak. You say, I'm broke, and the universe says, as you say, no one chooses me, and life echoes back. Very well, but what if that script isn't even true? What if it's just familiar? The biggest block. People confuse observation with agreement. Just because you see the lack doesn't mean you have to partner with it. But most do. They argue for their limitations. They build altars to their pain. They keep speaking the very condition they claim to want to change. To shift into alignment, you must stop rehearsing the conclusion. Start declaring the promise. Speak as if the invisible is more real than the visible. That's not delusion. That's dominion. That's spiritual maturity. Lack may knock, but you don't have to answer. I reject the language of lack. I now speak abundance over every area of my life. I no longer describe the storm. I declare the calm. I trust the invisible more than I fear the visible. I no longer argue for limitation. I rise in divine authority. My word is my wand, and I speak miracles into form. She didn't have much. Rent was due, groceries were thin, and all she had was a notebook and a decision. Every morning she wrote, I am provided for. Money flows to me in divine ways. My needs are met. At first, it felt ridiculous, but she kept going. She stopped saying, I can't afford it. She stopped talking about her debt. She trained her tongue to bless, not curse. 2 weeks later, a friend called. I don't know why, but I felt led to send you something. It was enough to cover rent and food. She wept, not just for the money, but for the evidence that her word was working. She didn't manifest money, she manifested her identity, and the money came to match. Lack is not a financial status, it is a spiritual agreement. If you want new results, write a new conclusion. Let this land in your spirit. You do not get what you want. You get what you declare. You get what you prepare for. You get what you're willing to become. Heaven does not respond to begging. It responds to belief. You are not out of blessings. You are out of alignment. You are not blocked. You are busy rehearsing fear. You are not waiting. You are being called to prepare. Speak the word. Assume the outcome. Align with the truth. And the unseen will become visible. Not because you forced it, but because you finally became the version of you that never doubted it was already. You say the words. You write the affirmations. You sit in the silence and you visualize. But deep inside, where the voice gets quiet, you're whispering doubt. You're rehearsing pain. You're hiding a tiny seed of fear that maybe it won't work for you. And that seed? It grows, quietly, invisibly, stubbornly. You wonder why things stay the same, why the breakthroughs don't come, why the blessings stall right before they reach your hands. So let me ask you this. What if it's not your faith that's the problem, but the secret fear you're too ashamed to admit? What if every time you silently brace for the worst, you're canceling your order with the universe? What if assumption only works when you stop checking if it's working? Here is the sacred truth. The law of assumption is not broken, but it breaks when you assume the new while preparing for the old. Doubt, hidden or spoken, is still a command, and the universe obeys it. You don't have to be perfect to receive, but you do have to stop feeding both wolves. You're not blocked, you're torn. You're not cursed, you're contradicting. And the contradiction is spiritual static. But here's the divine promise. The moment you stop watering doubt, your harvest begins. The law of assumption is simple, eternal, and exact. It is the law that your outer world must conform to the inner state you persist in assuming to be true. Not wishful thinking, not hoping, not begging, assuming, resting in it as if it already is. Florence said, "Man can only receive what he sees himself receiving." So, what is this law? Assumption is a quiet confidence, a spiritual claim, not performed, but embodied. It is not demanding, it is resting. It is not striving, it is knowing. Why does it get blocked? Because we assume consciously, but contradict unconsciously. You say, "I am rich," and then tighten your jaw when the bill comes. You say, "I am healthy," but secretly Google symptoms in the dark. You say, "My desires are here," and then refresh the tracking number like your life depends on it. This is not assumption, this is negotiation, and the universe does not negotiate with mixed energy. How do you realign? You surrender the argument. You surrender the but. You surrender the secret checking. And you choose one signal, one direction, one truth. Even when appearances don't reflect it yet, you see it, and that's enough. As Florence declared, your word is your wand. What you feel you attract, what you imagine, you become. So feel it, imagine it, speak it, and then walk away in peace. That's the signal, that's the assumption, that's when the law begins to move. I now stand firm in my assumption. I now stand firm in my assumption. I no longer argue for my past. I no longer argue for my past. I do not need signs to believe. I do not need signs to believe. I live as if it's done. I live as if it's done. I rest in divine certainty. I rest in divine certainty. I let the old fade away. I let the old fade away. There was once a woman who had prayed for years, but every morning she woke up with dread. She'd say the affirmations. She'd write the goal, but in the silence of her heart, she always prepared herself for disappointment. "I'll try again," she'd whisper, but she never really assumed it would change. One day she heard a phrase that cracked her open. Faith is not a performance, it's a position. She realized she had been performing faith, not embodying it. So she stopped. She didn't push harder. She didn't add more effort. She did something radical. She dropped the inner argument. No more defending the old pain. No more rehearsing the betrayal. No more explaining why it was hard. She began to walk, speak, breathe, as if her prayer had already arrived. And what happened next? Her world began to echo her new posture. People showed up. Emails arrived. Money flowed in unexpected ways. Not because she forced it, but because she assumed it. Quietly, without needing proof. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be consistent. You cannot assume you're healed while still arguing for your wounds. Assumption is not loud, it's loyal. Let me say this like a mirror. There comes a time in your journey when you must stop selling yourself short with your own story. You keep rehearsing what hurt you, who left you, what failed, why it never worked. You explain the old so well, you can't step into the new. You argue for the problem better than you assume the solution. But there is nothing noble about staying loyal to pain. There is no prize for staying in the waiting room. Assume the new life, without debate, without needing a round table of reasons. Speak the new and shut the door behind you. When the doubt creeps up, don't argue with it. Don't wrestle with it. Smile gently and say, that is no longer my reality. You don't have to convince the world. Just don't keep convincing yourself that the past is more real than the present you're creating. Stop looking for evidence. Be the evidence. Stop begging the door to open. Be the one who walks through as if it already has. This is not about delusion, it's about decision. An assumption is the most sacred decision you will ever make. So here's the final truth. Every time you doubt in secret, you deny your harvest in silence. Not as punishment, but as precision, because your world is loyal to your vibration. And you are not a victim of delay. You are a vessel of divine alignment. The moment you stop speaking lack, it stops showing up. The moment you stop defending pain, it stops repeating. The moment you assume the new, the old must bow. So decide, not just with your words, but with your energy. Assume the new life, and the old will let you go. Because it's not about fixing everything. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to. You keep searching, journaling, fixing, reading, watching, trying, and still, nothing feels clear. You're stuck in the swirl of what now and why not yet. You stare at the vision board, wondering when it will finally click. But no matter how much you do, you feel like something is in the way. You call it a block, a delay, a spiritual wall. But what if it's not a block at all? What if the thing holding you back isn't even real? What if what you call being blocked is just a distraction wearing a costume? Here's the truth. You are not blocked. You are distracted by appearances. You keep reacting to what you see instead of standing on what you know. And when the outer world pulls your focus, your power dissolves. But the divine promise is this. Once you stop letting appearances define your reality, the reality starts to change. You don't move mountains by doubting them. You move mountains by looking through them. The law of non-resistance is the path forward. So what is it? It's the spiritual law that says, whatever you stop fighting stops controlling you. Whatever you stop reacting to loses its grip. Florence Scovel Shinn taught it like this. None of these things move me. It doesn't mean apathy. It means unwavering spiritual poise. It means not letting the storm decide your mood. It means staying in alignment, even when the world tries to pull you into the illusion of fear. Why do people block this law? Because we think resistance equals power. We believe if we fight it harder, it'll go away. If we push back, scream louder, hustle more, then maybe we'll break through. But resistance feeds what we hate. The more energy you give it, even in anger, the more real it becomes in your experience. You can't reject reality into changing. You must rise above it. How do you realign? You pause, you breathe, and you let it pass through without clinging, fixing, or fearing. You declare, this is not mine. This is not my final story. You stop arguing with the appearance, and instead, you assume the unseen. You stay loyal to the vision, not the visible, because your attention is the doorway, and whatever you focus on, you fuel. So shift the gaze, withdraw the reaction, let the illusion die without your energy. That's non-resistance, that's power, that's poise. I no longer react to appearances. I no longer react to appearances. I stay loyal to the unseen. I stay loyal to the unseen. I release the need to fix. I release the need to fix. I let illusions pass through me. I let illusions pass through me. My peace is my power. My peace is my power. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. He used to wake up in a panic every morning. Heart racing. Thoughts racing faster. The bank account looked low. The emails were piling up. The opportunities felt like they were slipping away. He tried to manifest, visualize, affirm, but the fear always pulled him back. Then one day, he heard a phrase that shattered his pattern. Stop trying to move the problem. Move your focus. He realized he wasn't blocked. He was just addicted to appearances. So he made a simple but powerful shift. Every time fear rose, he whispered, "None of these things move me." He stopped refreshing the account. He stopped obsessing over outcomes. He walked through each day with calm confidence, even when nothing had changed yet. And within 2 weeks, things started moving. Opportunities that had stalled suddenly opened. Money that felt stuck flowed in unexpectedly, not because he forced the issue, but because he stopped reacting to the illusion. Punchline 1, you are not blocked, you are just too loyal to the illusion. Punchline 2, when you ignore appearances, reality obeys your command. Let me speak to that inner fire in you. You keep saying, "Why am I stuck?" But you're not stuck. You're staring at shadows. You're hypnotized by what hasn't happened yet. Obsessed with what hasn't moved yet. Chained to the same old images, on a screen, in your mind, in your routine. But here's the truth. Nobody told you. The visible is the slowest part of reality. The inner world moves first. The seen must follow the unseen. But you're letting the mirror tell you who you are. You're letting the delay define your destiny. And that's not alignment, that's amnesia. You forgot what's true. You forgot that the block is just a distraction. You forgot that silence doesn't mean absence, and delay does not mean denial. So take your power back. You don't need to clear blocks. You need to reclaim focus. You don't need to shout louder. You need to stand quieter, because your poise is your permission slip, and your peace is your portal. Walk forward like it's already done. Let the illusion crumble without your attention. Stop narrating what's wrong, and start embodying what's already. Because when you stop flinching at appearances, reality has to shift. You're not waiting for the world to change. You're waiting to stop reacting long enough to remember you are the shift. And when you remember, nothing can block you. Nothing can shake you. Nothing can keep what's yours from finding you. Because it never left. You just looked away. And now, you're home again. You're doing everything right. Scripting, journaling, working harder, saying the affirmations. You've burned the old vision boards and made new ones. You show up. You give your all. You try to stay positive. And yet, something still feels stuck. Something still hasn't moved. You're giving it your all. So why does it feel like life is still giving you half? Have you ever asked, why isn't my energy moving the needle? Why do I feel burned out but not blessed? Here's the truth most people never hear. Energy does not respond to your effort. It obeys your assumption. It's not what you do that shifts reality. It's what you know without question. And when your actions are laced with fear, doubt, or desperation, the energy obeys that. The divine promise is this. Once your assumption is locked in, reality must bend to match it, not eventually. Immediately. The outer is just a mirror of your inner knowing. Let's unlock the law that governs this, the law of assumption. What is it? It's the spiritual law that says what you assume to be true becomes your world, not because you earned it, not because you forced it, because you accepted it so deeply. The world had no choice but to reflect it. Florence Scovel Shinn put it like this: you cannot receive what you do not believe. She meant, your belief is the mold. If your subconscious has decided it's not yours, it cannot arrive, even if your words are perfect, even if your rituals are exact. Because energy reads the intention under the action. Why do people block this law? Because we worship effort. We're trained to believe the harder we push, the more we deserve. We think if we don't work for it, we can't have it. So we exhaust ourselves in the outer world while silently doubting in the inner world. And that doubt cancels the delivery. Because the real vibration isn't your effort, it's your expectation. How do you shift into alignment? You let the action follow the knowing, not the other way around. You decide it's yours, you walk like it's done, you remove the if and move with when. You stop hustling to prove worth, and instead embody certainty. You assume, I am already living the life I asked for. It just hasn't reached the physical yet. And when you move like it's already real, it has to become real. I trust my assumption more than appearances. I trust my assumption more than appearances. My effort is aligned, not anxious. My effort is aligned, not anxious. What I know within appears without. What I know within appears without. I now act from vision, not fear. I now act from vision, not fear. The world mirrors my inner yes. The world mirrors my inner yes. It is already mine. It is already mine. She had been applying for jobs for months, sending resumes, networking, showing up, hustling. Nothing landed, nothing flowed. Every almost turned into a no. Then one morning, she sat down and whispered to herself, what if I'm still assuming I'm unchosen? That one question cracked her open. She realized her actions had been covered in fear, a silent panic underneath. She was applying from doubt, not conviction. So she stopped. She put on her favorite outfit, walked to her mirror and said, I am not waiting for the call. I am the one they're already preparing for. And something shifted. She felt the click, the internal switch from hope to knowing. 2 days later, a recruiter messaged her. Not from the applications, but from a resume she'd forgotten she uploaded 6 months ago. When the assumption aligned, the energy obeyed. Punchline 1. Your actions are only as powerful as the belief behind them. Punchline 2. It's not about doing more, it's about assuming it's done. Listen, you've been trying hard. You've been giving it your all. But here's what nobody told you. The universe is not measuring it's responding to your certainty. Your fear is not noble. Your hustle is not proof. It's not about forcing, it's about forming the outcome in your inner world first. When you assume the door is open, you walk differently. When you assume you're worthy, you speak differently. When you assume it's already yours, the world rearranges to match. So stop asking, am I doing enough? And start asking, what have I truly accepted as mine? Because energy is not loyal to your effort. It is loyal to your and once your inner yes becomes louder than your outer fear, the shift begins. Now let's talk about your voice. Because it holds more power than you realize. More than crystals, more than timing, more than techniques. You speak your world into being. And every word carries instruction. But here's the trap. Most people speak their fear, and then wonder why it keeps arriving. You say, I'm afraid this won't work. I hope I don't lose this. What if it never happens for me? And the universe replies, because what you speak in fear, you invite in form. Florence said, man must prepare for the thing he has asked for, though he see no sign of it. But fear makes you prepare for the opposite. You brace for disappointment. You expect delay, and your words become the spell that shapes the delay into matter. So speak with authority. Speak from peace, not panic, not protection. Declare the vision, not the worry. Even when the fear rises, let your mouth agree with faith. I only speak what I want to see. I only speak what I want to see. I do not voice fear, I dissolve it. I do not voice fear, I dissolve it. My words create my future. My words create my future. I now speak as if the answer is here. I now speak as if the answer is here. My voice is aligned with my vision. My voice is aligned with my vision. What I speak in peace, I receive in power. What I speak in peace, I receive in power. He used to spiral every night before bed, replaying worst-case scenarios, whispering doubts into the dark. I just don't want to mess this up. What if I'm not ready yet? I hope this isn't another disappointment. And every morning, the anxiety followed him like a shadow, until one day he wrote this phrase on a sticky note. My words are invitations. He read it again, slower. He let it sink in. If his words were invitations, what had he been inviting? Fear, delay, failure. So he made a promise to himself. No more fear speeches, only faith speeches. Even when afraid, he'd speak the answer. That week, something broke open. The job offer came. The relationship stabilized. He started sleeping peacefully, not because everything was perfect, but because his voice no longer betrayed him. His words made space for the life he asked for. So I leave you with this. Your life is built in your voice print. What you speak in fear becomes your environment. What you speak in faith becomes your evidence. Your word is your wand. Use it wisely. Use it powerfully. Use it to build, not to brace. Use it to align, not to panic. Because the future is listening, and it's only allowed to echo what you say out loud. So speak like it's already here. Because when your voice aligns with your vision, the world has no choice but to follow. This is your wake-up call, and it's not whispering. You don't need to try harder. You don't need to beg heaven for one more sign. You are not delayed. You are not forgotten. You're just one internal shift away from everything turning. Because energy is not listening to your pain. It's listening to your posture. Not the desperation in your voice, but the decision in your soul. So ask yourself honestly, are you assuming the breakthrough is inevitable, or are you still waiting for proof? Are you walking like it's done, or wobbling like it's missing? Stop treating your desire like a stranger. Speak to it like it's already home. Hold the vibration, not the doubt. Bless the outcome, not the wait. This isn't about faking confidence. It's about commanding reality from the truth of your being. Because when assumption becomes law in you, when you become the version of yourself who has already received life has no choice but to mirror that wholeness. So what will you choose now? The fear that keeps you running, or the knowing that brings it home? You already know the answer. Now walk in it. Stop rehearsing delay. Start embodying done. If this shook you, don't just share it. Assume it's your turning point. Because the moment you do it,